Mm-hmm.
The sun did not shine. It was too wet to play. So we sat in that house all that cold, cold, wet day. I sat there with Sally. We sat there, we two. And I said, how I wish we had something to do. Who recognizes that excerpt? What's it from? Yeah, do you remember the book though? Yeah. Alright, so I just read that little excerpt, right? So it's kind of cute, right? Oh, you know. But, okay, and everybody kind of followed along with it, right? So we understand that there's two characters in there, and we understand that it's raining, and these two kids are bored stiff. Now, according to an article from USA Today, it actually made me realize, so I'm going to point this out to you. Do you realize that 38% of U.S. fourth graders can't read that simple poem, let alone understand it, or able to break it down through comprehension? So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to try to convince you and make you realize that there is a problem with the elementary school kids that aren't able to read proficiently at grade level, and I'm going to convince you that it causes problems later in their life and how it's affecting them because they're not able to progress with reading and difficult texts. And I'm going to also present a solution as to what we can do to help these kids so that way they can read proficiently and succeed better in life. So let's start back at the beginning. According to Peggy Wilbur, who coordinates a website called Teach a Child to Read, students can't read, and she says that they can't understand simple phonics. And there's, I believe, 12 rhetorics to like how kids should read. So it includes long vowel sounds and consonant sounds, and applying spoken words through text and things like that. And kids aren't able to understand those simple concepts because she says that in schools, a study that she did through the United States, 90% of teachers don't actually follow those rhetorics and don't actually implement those to the students. Because there's something I need to disprove right now. If a general class, if you ask like 30 kids if they understand something, there will be those 4 or 5 that probably don't understand anything. But if you're third grade, you're going to agree with everybody because it's the thing to do, right? So you're going to go and say, oh yeah, I get it. So teachers overlook those students who don't understand those simple phonics, the consonant sounds, the vowel sounds, and are able to apply those to the text that they're reading. So teachers kind of tend to overlook those students, and they just keep progressing and they add more information to those kids. Again, and then they're not able to apply those things together when they continue reading texts. And then another study showed that through Peggy Wilbur, children think that reading is boring. Now, I have to kind of agree with this, because I remember when I was a kid, I didn't like to read. But I mean, I was able to read proficiently at my grade level, and I think a lot of that consists of the time we live in now. If you look around us, a lot of our life is based on technology. There's moving images everywhere, the way things are advertised and marketed. So if you show a kid the preview to Avatar, that looks way cool. But if you show them the cover of the book and it's just like that face for like the marketing image, I'm sure the movie or the trailer is going to look way more interesting than having the kid read a simplified version of Avatar the movie. So it's just the times we live in. And so of course children think reading is boring, but it's because they haven't been exposed to how to read properly. So I mean, if children are struggling to try to do something that they kind of want to do, they're going to be dissuaded really easily because they don't understand those simple rhetorics and they can't going through the text. They'd much rather someone tell them something versus them trying to figure something out on their own. So they get easily discouraged at that age. So that second topic that I was talking about the text. Children fall behind as they progress into high school and higher education if they don't understand those simple fundamentals at a younger age. So I remember my freshman year, a major text that we had to read in high school was To Kill a Mockingbird. Have you guys read that? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Who likes the book? Oh, sorry. I'm sorry I'm not sure that enthusiasm with you. But my teacher did the same thing. She kept preaching to me, this is great American literature right here. And I'm reading the first 20 pages and I'm thinking this is the most boring piece of crap I've ever read in my life. Sorry if anybody liked it. But that was just my opinion. But I remember, because we had I guess you could say an experimental teacher my freshman year, so they brought her in from another district and she was supposed to implement different teaching tactics. And so she wanted to do popcorn reading. Who remembers popcorn reading, right? So, so I pick on you and then you read and then I go over. So what ends up happening is, I remember I get picked on and a couple other of my friends get picked on. We're just reading and I'm like trying not to sleep as I'm reading this text. And then I kind of look to my left because I hear someone that I kind of know, and they're struggling through this text, and they're just like really simple words. So And it made me wonder about it, and I'm like, oh, why can't they read? This is a pretty simple book. I mean, it's boring as hell, but it's a simple book to read, I thought. So that kind of ties into, if you're not learning the fundamentals at that young age, you're not able to progress and build on those building blocks, right? So you can't necessarily progress and read those more difficult texts. So, and speaking of text, books don't get easier as you get older, and it's not the text itself, it's you becoming a more proficient reader. So if you're struggling with simple text like that, there's nothing to say that you're going to be able to just figure that out on your own later. Like, that's something you need to put time into. Texts don't get easier. You as a reader become more proficient, so you can read that text much simpler. So as these students, or now young adults, get older, they're not going to be able to break down some of the larger texts within school. They won't be able to really understand a really challenging book that they might want to read. And that can tie into if they wanted to get into a university. They're going to struggle trying to write that acceptance essay. They're going to struggle trying to give a pretty decent speech or an introductory video, so that way they can convince this board that they want to come into this university. And they might struggle trying to get into write a specific job application, or what's it called? I'm trying to think of the word. Resume. Thank you. Resume. So that higher end vocabulary won't necessarily show, because again, the struggles that they had when they were younger, when they were reading. So as we presented the problems, teachers are kind of overlooking the fact that kids can't read proficiently, so they're not getting as much individual attention as needed. And then we can see how that later causes a problem in life. So how can we, as young adults or as parents, because I know there's parents in the audience, how can we help these students read proficiently so that way they can succeed and just breeze through some of this later in life? Well, the main thing that we can do that is actually overlooked according to another article by USA Today. It's the easiest solution, but everybody just overlooks it. About 80% of the people that are aware of this, because it's just so mundane. And it's just read to the kid, read to your child, read to your younger sibling for 15 minutes a day. That's the estimated amount of time that they say you should take time to read to your child. And that's because children are later inclined to read on their own, provided you take that time to read with them. So when you get past simple books like Where the Wild Things Are, that's simple text, and they're understanding that. And so they're going to be enthused about reading, so when they decide to pick a book out on their own without you knowing, they'll come up to you and they'll be like, oh, big brother or mom, dad, guess what? I read this book on my own. So a lot of parents, what they do at that point is they stop and they're like, oh, well, good job. But that's about it. You should, the parent or the sibling should actually incline and ask, oh, well, what was the book about? And that increases their reading comprehension. So just with simple things like that, 15 minutes a day breaks down all those elements for the kid or the child, and then they're able later to apply all of that, because they're building those blocks. They're able to understand what they're reading, they're seeing what they're reading, and they're able to increase their vocabulary and their speech. And then patience is probably another thing too. And this is something I emphasize with myself too, because I remember there'd be times when I didn't want to read to my niece, because I have several nieces, nephews, like 9. But so if they want to read, I don't want to do the popcorn reading thing. But 15 minutes is like half the time it takes to watch a show I really don't want to watch on TV. 15 minutes is half the time it takes to do just about anything I want to do. It's not a large amount of time. And then technology, like I mentioned earlier, although it dissuades from the child to want to read because of all the media and the movies and these crazy sci-fi effects that we're able to produce with technology, schools can actually incorporate some of this technology within the teaching. So, like, you guys remember Schoolhouse Rock? Right, yeah. So that stuff's pretty cool. It's not super high-end CG effects, but it's able to have the student connect images with words. And so it's another way for them to process what they're trying to learn and what they're trying to get out of this. So by the end of this speech, I hope that I've convinced you that, if you have a younger sibling or if you have a child that wants to read, take the time to read with them. So that way Sally doesn't have to sit in the rain wondering what to do because the cat in the hat's not real. So we kind of know this, and they're not going to show up with thing 1 and thing 2. So take that time to read with your child or your younger sibling, and you can help them progress later in life and in school and in their future in general.